Hey, real quick. Never mind.
What's going on?
We're recording. What's up, Quincy?
Nothing at all, man. Um, what's been going on with you?
Mostly good things. I got to go home for Christmas. Home is like Indiana, Ohio, and for Thanksgiving. So the holidays were great. Bringing a new child to the family just brings everyone's spirits up. New grandchild, and so the grandparents are happy, and it's just everyone's in better spirits when there's new life brought to the world.
Man, I didn't think about that in that way. Hopefully I'll share that experience, man.
So
That
no,
is, after all the, you know, 2021 and 2022 have been like a couple of long years, man.
hmm
So what's this about you quitting social media over the holidays, man?
yeah, I've been done since right before Thanksgiving. I basically put down social media, all forms of social media. It's hard to avoid people sending Twitter links though, because like Twitter's turned into a news source. So if someone sends you links,
Mm.
like friends are constantly sending you links or screenshots of tweets. So it's hard to 100% avoid it, but I've at least my activity on the apps has gone off. But it kind of the podcast with Joe Rogan, Tristan Harris came on Joe Rogan with another guy. And Tristan Harris, I've been following for a while. He used to work for Google,
Mhm.
I think maybe Facebook as well, but he was like a design ethicist, and he was trying to get create more humane technology. And I think his company now is like the Centers for Humane Technology. And he's just advocating for creating technology that doesn't uh, take leverage our brain stem and our lizard brains and get us to do things to create more productivity in the apps, to create more revenue for the ad buyers, and but more of like time well spent for the human. And he criticizes a lot of social media because, like, Instagram and Twitter, and how it just brings, there's a lot of recent studies that he references around depression and anxiety. He was referencing, so it was like a straw that broke the camel's back for me. And I definitely plan to come back, but in a more strategic way. I just feel like when I'm on social media and I spend 30 minutes, I don't feel better after it. I never feel better after a 30-minute session on Twitter or Instagram.
So you're not getting those fun dance videos on Instagram, man.
Yeah, I get those on from from TikTok. The TikTok's a weird one, because it's like you get it almost gets into the creepy world with TikTok, because I always get like a TikTok video and then it rotates into the next one, and it's always like a 17-year-old girl dancing. You know what I mean? And I'm like, what are the algorithms doing here? You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Well, you know what? So in light of like this whole year, man, I think we've done a couple of podcasts and like around the subjects of like, I don't know, like vaccines and like Black Lives Matter, woke stuff and all of that.
Mhm.
I have a theory, man. I have a couple of theories that I've written about social media and its influence on society. I think it is one of the number one influences when it comes to like how our society has evolved to what it is today. And I don't know, it's not necessarily the worst thing, but it is a bad thing as far as how we communicate with each other. And specifically what I mean is that it seems like there's this the younger generations who are growing up with social media, they're taking this non-nuanced approach to ideas. And when it comes to like, I don't know, solving real problems, and there's a lot of generalizations and that sort of thing. And I think and I have this just a hypothesis. I think it comes from social media. And the other thing is, I've done other podcasts with other people, and I have my own YouTube people that I watch and that kind of thing. And I think prolonged social media, being on social media is not, maybe it's the same way in like when it comes to um any kind of stardom or something like that. But I've seen a lot of people go downhill who've like built their brand on like, I don't know, 2021 uh protests. They've built their brand on like being a disinfected liberal, and now they're in this space where it's like you got to continue like feeding the beast of like outrage and like, oh, the woke people did this, oh, look
Mm,
at them, they did this. And I don't think it's, I don't, you have a point. I watched those Tristan episodes as well, and it just feels like, but I'm talking about the other end of it when you're the content creator. And I feel like once you start gaining money or prestige from that little ecosystem, you have to constantly feed the beast, man. Like,
yeah, yeah.
have you seen that? Like,
Incentives. I immediately think of more. They're painted as conservatives or on the right, but I think Tim Pool, and then there's another guy. I can't think of it, but he was an Asian news reporter. I can't think of his name. He's
Andy,
popular.
no,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Him as well. Where it's just like, which is interesting because if I want to get a balanced opinion on something, I'll go. Where if a new, say, I get an article or something from CNN or New York Times or like something left that I know is biased, I'll go to them for the opposite. Yeah. Where the protest happens, I hear something from CNN, then I'll go to them and they'll have a complete opposite perspective and probably some video content of something in the protest. You know what I mean?
yes,
So it's like, but I hear you. They're definitely feeding the beast, and there's no way out of it. It's like now you have your audience, so you're either just going to cut off most of your audience if you stop sending out that content. That's interesting, though. That's an interesting, because I would say the opposite of them. I'm thinking like some famous podcasters, people like Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss, where they just bring on people, a broad audience, and it's not a monologue, and they're just constantly, and it's diverse, whereas their content is not diverse. Whereas like they will forever be there unless they say something racist on camera. You know what I mean? Unless they get
yeah.
canceled,
And I've stopped listening. I wouldn't say I stopped listening to, but I haven't prioritized listening to those things anymore, because it's like, I don't know, like it was good when you needed to see, because the reason why I trusted them, because they did the same work I was doing, except for I didn't have a time to set up a camera and go through those articles one by one and do, like, I would do the deep dive in myself because I was just curious. But it's like they were like, oh, this is what happened, and let me connect some dots here, blah blah blah. And it was good while it lasted, but now it's like, do we really want to do this every day?
The most extreme version is Alex Jones, where I listened to his process. Like, the audience may get like a whiplash of hearing Alex Jones' name, but just hearing on Joe Rogan, just his process of the way he consumes information. Like, he's doing this 16 hours a day, and he's just consuming content. And he has like a weird, good, like photographic memory, I think he said.
Yeah.
But he also has substance abuse problems. He had depression problems, anxiety. I guarantee you Tim Pool and the Sandy No guys probably has similar, if you dug into it. It's like, these things aren't good for us. When now you are someone just constantly putting out negative content, and then you're strangleholded by feeding the beast, like you said, then it's just not good for your psyche.
Mm-hmm.
So it's weird because yeah, I mean, it kind of lends itself to like, where do we need to go? And we're at the dawn of the new year, right? We're at the dawn of the new year. We have 2 years in a row of a pandemic that seems to be getting worse.
Well,
recently.
yeah, we're gonna talk about that. And yeah, I think social media is like at the crux of most of our problem. Like, and I'm glad you brought. I didn't think about that until you told me that, and then the other thoughts started coming together as far as social media. I think it is doing a lot of harm to our society. Like, even like I said, the disinfected liberal crowd. Like this, I don't know if you heard her. There's another one. Her name is Karen Borisenko, I believe her name.
Yep. Yep.
And the other day, it's like it's getting weird. Like the other day, she posted something about her religious beliefs that were just, it's not necessarily because I can see my friends have, like, I wouldn't say any of my friends have her views, but she posted something that was weird. Like everyone, she has some kind of spiritual beliefs in which and I could be misquoting her. I don't want to misquote her, but what I'm saying is that it was an unorthodox view that some kind of way it was almost like reincarnation or something. But I don't know. And then the question that I have, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because she said something that was connected to the Nazis and Hitler. Like Hitler, she said something like Hitler went to heaven. She believed Hitler went to heaven and all this stuff. And this is a sane person, right? And the thing is, when someone says something like that on social media, it's like, are you just trying to feed the beast or create outrage so you can get more exposure, or do you really believe these things? And I don't want to put words in our mouth, so I'm not gonna, like, if you want to go on Twitter and follow her handle and see what she said, it got so bad that Newsweek wrote an article about it.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I mean, I can share that article in the description, but I think it goes back to what you're saying is social media, like, it's doing more harm than good. I know it's good for like when CNN says something that's not true, we can go on social media and we can see all the evidence. I mean, police departments post affidavits. There's court documents that are posted. It's really good for like finding the truth behind things. But it's the negative aspect that, I don't know, led you to the decision you made of like, I'm done with it. You know what I'm saying?
One of the big things that Tristan Harris referenced was this, what he called like this perception gap of the way, and I think the research that they did was looking at, in a political perspective, political ideology of left versus right. And it was basically it did an analysis to see your perception of, if you're left, the right's views, and if you're right, the left's views, and then reality, and see and measure what that perception gap was. And the more time you spend on social media, the wider that perception gap got from reality. And then at the fringe of that, where the more viral you became, it like promoted itself to virality, kept increasing the perception gap the more viral you became. So like and it lends itself to what you were just talking about.
Yes, that makes
some of the people.
sense.
So then and then he started getting some other things, just blew me away, like these Facebook groups that are run by bots. And there's the famous one that keeps getting repeating, where these Christian groups are like 3/4 bots, like 3/4 of the Christian groups on Facebook are bots, run by bots. And then another one was around like African American groups, like 50% or something like that. Don't quote me on the exact numbers, but it was enough to be alarmed about. So bots are running these Facebook groups and just exacerbating. And then there's another one where like Facebook, because of it's feeding the beast of the revenue and the incentives towards that revenue, it allowed for features like, if I created a Facebook group and I invited someone, they don't even have to accept this invitation. Now this enabled me to send shit to their newsfeed. So now when they're on their newsfeed, so if I'm some like fringe radical on either side, now their newsfeed's getting flooded with this content. And so that's another thing that just blew me away. And then there was one more. There's there's an entire Reddit thread of bots arguing with each other. And he brought this up on the screen and was showing like these bots were very articulate, and it's just a bunch of bots arguing with each other, and they seem like real people. And then there was one more, and I'll end on this. There was this, I forget what the exact number was, but there was like 100 million or so, 100 million people communicate with bots a month or something like that. So like, we don't even know imagine all the times you got upset by like viral Twitter tweet, you get into the replies and there's these people like saying stuff, and it's like, then your brain starts getting in this friction, and you're kind of like, you get into the tribal warfare into the comments. It's like, are you just arguing with fucking bots? Mm-hmm. And then this is bringing down your psyche and just bringing down, it's just, you're heightening your anxiety and all of the negative things and negative emotions. And it's like, I'm just going to cut it all out and see how I feel. I definitely feel much better. The problem is for people that want to learn and try to make the world a better place and extend their reach, social media is the spot to have the most reach. So now I've been trying to think deeper about how I can use social media in a different way that is more around sending out valuable content, similar to how you and I write. We spend a lot of time writing an article, and it's just ourselves thinking about this topic for a long time, doing research, articulating our viewpoint, re-articulating, and then putting it out in the world. That to me is a better value to the world, and social media doesn't support that type of critical thinking and long thought out process. It goes back to what you were talking about, where it's just like with some of these folks where you only have 160 characters or 240, where the hell it is now, and it doesn't allow for nuance, doesn't allow for conversation, and then the algorithms get into place, and now you can't even see the other viewpoint. That's where I think, and the data, even deaths around suicide and amongst young women, girls 12 to 17, has just gone through the roof since social media started on the iPhone. So now that we had this thing in our pockets 24/7, and young girls are more heightened by the social peer influence phenomenon. That's the hypothesis that some people talk about. And Jonathan Haidt, this is one of the guys who talks about it, this problem, but it's got even worse during the pandemic. I was just reading, year over year, there's a 51% increase in suicide attempts among 12 to 17-year-old girls year over year. And that just blows my ever living mind. But yeah, so that it's just, how do we get beyond it and start creating better content? Like, I guess creating better content in a more meaningful way.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a hard question. I think about it a lot. Do you consider a platform like Medium to be social media, because it has all the same components of social media?
The way I use it, no, because I honestly don't go. The only time I open it is to review. The only time I open Medium as an app is to review stats from an article I posted, or I open it on the web because I'm just taking my writing in OneNote and my notes and then pasting it to there, and then sending out the article and letting it to the wild.
The more and more I think about it, and this is a real time thought. I haven't thought about this before, but this seems like I think it's one of those things. It's like, imagine when gunpowder was introduced to society, or like cannons. And like, I remember watching documentaries like all up until this point, like the Byzantine Empire, like it fell because, they finally figured out like
Mm.
uh, gunpowder and cannons, and they could take down the walls. Now they can easily siege a city now. And I'm thinking that it's just going to be one of those things we have to live with, because I mean, guns were the same thing. Like, I mean, we could demonize guns, but is it just that our society is new to our society, and now we just have to learn gun safety, and like we have to learn how to train people? Like, I don't know. I mean, this is just me just thinking out loud as far as social media, because there's a lot of good components of social media, and it basically has jump started my career. I mean, I wouldn't say social media in particularly, but like Facebook advertising, which I'm the and maybe this is the time we can talk about metaverse, because I had this 2-hour conversation with a friend of mine like a couple of weeks ago about, like, he was excited about the metaverse, and I'm looking at what social media has done in our society. I'm like, I'm not so excited about this metaverse idea.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
But it's stuff like that, and we're getting to the point where now we're selling stuff. Like, he was talking about how excited it was that people are going to be selling clothing in the metaverse, and you're going to pay real money for that, or like selling property in the metaverse. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I've seen what social media has done to our society from a standpoint, even though that, I'm in the mix of it. It's like I'm in the matrix, but it's like, I don't, I don't have a warm and fuzzy feeling about the metaverse. What are your
No,
thoughts on that stuff, man?
the metaverse, specifically, we're talking about the Facebook's new metaverses.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you see the
What
video with Zuckerberg?
I think so. The quirky one where these kids, it's like an advertisement for it. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
That one I've definitely seen. That's weird, just because it any type of advertisement, I'm psychologically trying to analyze what's happening. And honestly, any type of advertisement is usually sophisticated, especially at the Facebook level. It's sophisticated enough where it's targeting your subconscious. It's not even targeting it. So analyze it consciously, you're already behind.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress on that. I was listening to something recently about this new world of VR chat. Have you heard about this? Which sounds like the metaverse.
Yes, that's connected.
So like there's these worlds where you people are developing, it's just like these open VR worlds where like you can actually wear a VR and be in your living room and use the sensors and do all this
Yep.
stuff. And you're creating your own characters, and then you're creating your own clans and stuff. And then that is very weird to me. I try to put myself in video. That lends itself to almost like video games. It's similar. And I'm just thinking about this on the fly right now. But
I know.
there's pros and cons to video games. And the cons I see it is where it's the whole concept of like moderation, where you still need to experience, you need to stay connected with Mother Nature. And if and get outside and breathe and play and yada yada yada, even as adult, and experience the trees and the woods and whatever. And it's like there's obviously a lot of positive research towards getting out in nature. I mean, Japan prescribes forest bathing, but so that part worries me. But if you use it in moderation, there's like a lot of positive things too. You get this tribal, if you become very good character and build up a prestige and get good at this game, then you can derive meaning from that, and derive, like, because people see you as a skilled professional in this video game. And I've been good at video games when I was a teenager, I used to play real-time strategy games,
Hmm.
and there's this game called Empire Earth, similar to Age of Empires. And I remember getting really good at the game, but I would play this game a shit ton. I felt like I still got out as well. I rode bikes a lot in the neighborhood, but I remember I'd play this game from like 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. and just beat and got really good. But I remember getting, you would get like famous in the video game, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, with like playing. I know you played Halo and stuff, so it's like if you have that balance, then I don't see anything wrong with the metaverse. But my fear is we've already, with the new generations coming up, Gen Z and whatnot, you're already seeing where the depression and anxiety is already up because all they know are phones.
Yes.
You see 4-year-olds, 3-year-olds now with phones constantly. I'm going to have to deal with this with a new child. And it, if we're almost like bionic now, our phones are attached to us. Like, you can't get rid of your phone. If someone came out tomorrow and said that your phones are definitely giving you cancer, and we know this for a fact, and you're going to die 15 years earlier than normal, I guarantee you probably less than 10% of people would stop using their phones. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
And so it's so we're going to be, if people get stuck in this world and this starts turning into reality, that's when it could get scary, because then you lose all sense of reality, then you lose all sense of meaning, because then all it takes is like, well, all it takes is the grid to shut down. You know what I mean? The grid shuts down, the internet's down for some reason, odd reason, some totalitarian regime comes in, and oh, internet's gone.
Yeah, that's all
and you're
scary.
screwed.
And that's kind of everything you said are my are the same kind of things that I think about, because it's like, I think that a lot of people like me, you know what, I'm not even gonna put myself in that category. I would say that there's a lot of people who can handle it. I don't know. But what I do know is, like, society's the impact. I feel like there's an impact that society is feeling from a younger generation who is being less detached from nature. Like, let's say that you're in a playground and you fall and you bump your head. Like, it means something for little boys to run around in roughhouse and understand what they're physically capable of, or understand how to use their limbs, how to, get out of a chokehold, or
Or an altercation, verbal
or
one even.
yeah, even those kind of real world scenarios, I think they're important. And I think that the next generation is moving away from that. Social media is we're marching towards a generation that is a little bit detached from reality, or the real world, or the natural world, however you want to put it.
That's a good point. On that same altercation topic, in social media, there's altercation, and there's nothing after. It's like getting hey, vaccines are good or vaccines are bad, fight, done, unfollow this person, or and you're done with it. Whereas in real life, you actually have to get nuanced about the topic and have a dialogue, and there's value to disagreeing with someone and then staying friends with that particular person despite the disagreement.
Yes, I find that we're moving. That's a good point, because I feel like there's a lot of people who, like, we don't know how to derive value from disagreements, because when you disagree, when someone poses to you another solution, another way of looking at things, you have to parse through that. You have to to wade through those waters. If you're on the playground, you're playing with kids, and one kid has a toy and that you used to have, you're gonna have to talk to that kid to get your toy back. You're gonna have to see why he took your toy, if you can get it back. Are you stronger than this kid? Do you fight this kid? Do you go tell your mom? Do you go tell the teacher? Like, there's a whole list of ways of how you solve conflict that I think is being, and this could be just me talking out of the top of my head, but I feel like conflict resolution and the value of conflict is being minimized by our detachment from reality
and social media.
Yeah.
100%. That is, I mean, I've lost friends since the election and throughout this whole not like good friends, but like co-workers that were friends and I still talk to. You and I did that podcast where it was you and I both voted for Trump, but I said that I'm not voting Democrat, and I remember sharing that with a friend, and it was just immediately like we weren't friends anymore. It was just like this. It was this just like when we used to text and share what books we were reading and whatnot, and then all of a sudden it was just like I was the scum of the earth because I was voting for Trump. But I even making the statement that I said I'm not voting Democrat, like I'm not voting for Trump either. I'm just not voting Democrat. I can't, because all of these reasons of me seeing the principles of what I believe leads to a better democracy and republic and nation are being taken away. And that's the reason. And I think it's going to get worse with this new president. And that wasn't good enough. It was just like, now we're not friends. We text here and there, but it's just like, it wasn't what it was. And that's exactly what we're talking about, which is like conflict resolutions. We're talking about fucking adults that can't have, and I guarantee there's shit tons of families that are dealing with this over Thanksgiving, Christmas, holidays, and they have the same problems where they can't even. I heard a anecdotal story from a family member or some friend or something where this they're having a family dinner and the mom has her new boyfriend over and they start getting a politics discussion at dinner, and then this new guy says something that this kid didn't like, young 20 something, and then the kid throws a fit, asks him if he's one of these racist people, stands up, storms out, and goes to his room. We're talking about a like over 21-year-old, right? And it's like, this is it's a problem. It's a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, because the reason why it's a problem is because, and that's enough. I mean, we can go on and on, but the reason why it's a problem is because if you have a society, our society was built on a multicultural foundation, even though, I mean, it didn't originally start there, but that's where it is now. And the fact that we have all these different types of people from different nations, different ways of life, different ideologies, different religions, how are these people going to live together if our society is moving constantly towards a place where we can't see the value in, like, oh, that person disagrees with me, but they may know something that I don't know. We may disagree on this, but here's where we agree. And this is what can make us all a better, this country, this nation, a better place. And the fact is, we don't even agree like what our biggest problems are. And I think the largest problem in which we see this is the vaccine mandates. Like, you can't oppose a mandate without being an anti-vaxxer now. Like, it's those kind of things, like you're missing the nuance. Like, oh yeah, you can't say on social media, again, I guess it's going back to social media, you can't say, oh, I got the vaccine, however, I don't agree with the vaccine mandates. No, there's no nuance in any conversations that we're having. And
Mhm,
it's all, I think it's all about creating an emotion, and the algorithms are driving that emotional response. They're looking
mhm,
for, like, I don't know, to, and I do it too. Like whatever is emotionally, even when as an advertiser, I am
mhm,
writing ad copy that emotionally moves people. I've been doing it for years. That's what,
mhm,
so I know the process, I know the system, and the algorithms that gives me feedbacks. I see how many clicks this ad got, how many clicks this headline got. We did headline testing,
mhm,
and that's the way it is now. And it's getting to a point where we've maximized that kind of, I don't know, that ecosystem, but I think it's to the point where it's out of control. I wouldn't say out of control, but it's like a runaway train. I would say.
mhm,
Like
mhm.
going to a place, and I don't think it's a place. I don't think it's a good place.
No, it's definitely not. Like the yeah, I mean the vaccine mandate situation. I mean all the stuff you and I have been talking about, and then have been popular. Like here's a contradiction for you. Like so we have the new vaccine mandate in Chicago starting on January 3rd that the lovely mayor induced on us, and you essentially can't go to anything besides a grocery store, unless you have the vaccine.
Mhm.
And what's weird about it is what's weird about it just in general is that it's not like we're at an all-time high of deaths.
Yes, I was
We're,
thinking
you
about
know,
that. We're
we're
on
at,
the back end of
we have high cases of this new Omicron variant because it's more contagious, but like it's already been shown in where it started in South Africa, and then I think Britain, and then now even in the US, that hospitalizations and deaths are just uh, taking a nosedive. If you're looking at a graph, cases are going up and then deaths are like dropping. And so then that's like very odd. But then not even that, most people are vaccinated. So it's like it's obviously spreading amongst vaccinated people. And now even recently, like you look at this sports like NFL, like it's damaging the
oh
NFL,
man,
especially around
brutal,
playoffs, and
brutal.
the NBA, and then even college basketball. Like I was looking at my app of some college basketball games, and it's like postpone, canceled. DePaul University locally is forfeiting. They're not even postponing, they're just forfeiting.
Wow, I did not know that.
So then, and you have quarterbacks coming out of Jewel Osco to go go throw the football to, and it's like, what is going on? I think the hospitalization rate for the NFL player is 0%. you know, I know deaths are 0%, but I haven't seen any NFL player go to the hospital. If it is, it's one or two. And so then we're like, okay, well, let's just use some data and say, like, okay, has the vaccine mandates in these other places helped? And then you look at some of these countries or even states like New York. There's this funny graph. I wonder if I could share it. I think I shared before, and the thing messed up on this podcast, but I would love to share this graph. And it shows the contradiction of, like, we're obviously not looking at data, and what is driving it is bad incentives. Let's see here. There's these like funny graphs that come out on. Let me just allow me to share real quick, Quincy.
Yeah, let me see. How do I do that? Allow participants to share. You got it?
Yeah, it's coming. Can you see my screen where it says New York City?
Yep, I can see.
So you have since 2020, and it's just going through September. This is cases jacked up in the winter of this year. It goes down. New York City induces, you see this high here. Vaccine passports was hit in August in New York City. then you see there's kind of downtrend. And then here's recently, I mean, look at this. So de Blasio announces private business vaccine mandates. Here's vaccine passports. Here's vaccine mandate to all private businesses. Here's a mask mandate reinserted. Here's cases. Chicago's just, so why wouldn't Chicago just look at this data and say, obviously there's more nuanced conversation. And so that's the type of shit that irritates me to the point where like it's obviously not just, and the media has driven us into this binary thing. And you brought this up, this is what started the conversation of like, this is a polarized topic and there's no nuance to it. So then we get in this, it's either the vaccine or not the vaccine. But then you hear, I listened to Peter McCullough come on Joe Rogan, which now has 40 million views, by the way.
Wow, that's a lot.
Probably the most of ever Joe Rogan podcast ever.
Yes.
And I think viewership at CNN is like 600,000 roughly. You know what I mean? So just to give you a sense of comparison, but Peter McCullough was talking about preventing deaths, and early treatment is the way to prevent deaths, vaccine or unvaccinated. And he talks about some of the treatment. It's all the ones that are censored and you're not allowed to talk about. Monoclonal antibodies is the number one. It's difficult to find it. Ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine or something like that, HQL, whatever it is. Then there's even other ones, quercetin, which is just a compound, and it's an antioxidant that you find in like fruits and vegetables that they synthesize out. And then of course vitamin D. I saw there's a ton of research out now that says there's basically been virtually zero people to get COVID or die from COVID that has a vitamin D level of 50 milliliters or whatever the measurement is, or above.
Can you please send me that link?
100%.
Here's 100%. The thing, when you already sent it?
No, I will. I said 100%. I'll send it. I'll follow up. Yeah.
So at the beginning of the pandemic, what I was reading, I was like, everything I'm reading has a similar same number. Like people with high vitamin D don't get it, or blah, 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 or they have mild symptoms or something like that. I'm not gonna try to, make an exact quote, and I started taking vitamin D supplements, and I was asking people about it. Like I know a nurse, I asked her about it. She was like, oh, I don't know. If you take extra vitamin D, you're just gonna urinate it out. And you talk to help, and I wrote a long post about this. Is way before the pandemic, by the way, because I knew a pharmacist, and it just seems like every time there was like a question, when I had like a serious question that dove into real world scenarios, there was a lot. I think they have a lot of book learning or knowledge of what these medicines do. I'm by no means saying don't listen to your doctor or your pharmacist or anything like that, but it's when there's a problem just comes out of the blue and you need answers to questions that didn't exist before. It seems like the medical profession just kind of drops the ball when it comes to that. And it's studies like that. And I was debating on social media with this guy about he was saying, I was giving him some information. I mean, it was something miscellaneous, like having kids lift weights or something like that. But I told him, I was like, this is my logic. I don't understand why this isn't something that is standardized or taught in school. And it's the same thing with the vitamin D situation. It's okay, I don't know if there may be some peer-reviewed studies about vitamin D as far as when it comes to COVID. But if a lot of people have this anecdotal knowledge about this thing, that it helps, blah, 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 and they have stats that it could be wrong, it could be wrong, it could be right. The thing is, what is the risk reward of taking more vitamin D? If I take extra vitamin D, I'm not going to die.
Yeah.
If there is a chance, a small chance, we have not, even if we didn't have any proof, there's a small chance that taking extra vitamin D will save my life, then why not take that? Because the risk is minimal. The risk is like minuscule. So why not? Why that's how you navigate a world of uncertainty. It's like, what is my risk and what are my risks and what are my rewards? Why am I going to argue with you about the efficacy of vitamin D if it doesn't matter if I'm right, if I'm wrong? If I'm wrong, then you just have a lot of vitamin D in your body. Like,
Yeah.
does that? Am I making sense here?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And so vitamin D, amongst all of the ways to help, just gets, like, no one talks about it. Like all we talk about, and what Peter McCullough was elucidating really in that podcast was like, he believes all of the incentives and motivations towards revenue of pharmaceutical companies, intentionally or unintentionally, drive the narrative. I heard Robert F. Kennedy's been going around. He wrote a new book called The Real Anthony Fauci. Have you seen this?
Oh, I haven't.
Yeah. So he's been bouncing around he was on Michaela Peterson and Theo Vaughn's podcast, but he's going around, he's doing a book tour. And one of the things that he said is that Anderson Cooper gets paid like $12 million and 10 million of it comes from Pfizer, essentially. So it's like, what do you think? Do you think he's going to say something opposite of what Pfizer wants and needs? You know what I mean? Like if he talks about vitamin D, like if he came out and Anderson Cooper said, oh, there's this new study came out, vitamin D, you are virtually cannot get a viral infection or a COVID when you have a vitamin D level of 50 whatever measurement or above. And that would then, like, if I'm the pharmaceutical company, I'm thinking, well, shit, that's going to sway people from not getting the vaccine. Going back to your point, risk reward, what do you think is a higher risk reward, vaccine or taking vitamin D? You know, it's like, at minimum, getting out in the fucking sun and to get vitamin D, which we know is very helpful unless you're out there for 4 hours and get 3rd-degree burns. But anyway, I recently got my vitamin D tested, and I do take vitamin D. Like I'll take cod liver oil. I used to take a little bit of cod liver oil, but I was always hesitant because you can overdo it. So I always was cautious about taking any supplement because, like, you can take, there's, as all things, there's been people that have died of eating too much bok choy because if you there's a toxicity effect once you hit a certain level, and there is with vitamin D, of course. So I've always been hesitant, but I came in low. I was at 32 on my vitamin D, and I get out in the sun a decent amount. And I did get COVID in April of last year. So after the winter, no sun, I probably was low on vitamin D. Now I just went to Florida, and one of the motivations even going to Florida recently was getting vitamin D. I just went out to the beach every single day, and hopefully that'll kickstart me. And now I'm taking, the doctor recommended 5,000 IUs. I'm roughly doing like 2,000-3,000 because I still think 5,000 is too much. But I'm trying to get that vitamin D up. And I've heard anecdotal evidence. One of my cousins, he's basically been exposed to COVID. He started doing vitamin D about 8 months ago, and he's been exposed to people in hours at a time with COVID with symptoms, and he didn't get it. Like, I've heard a few anecdotal stories of that, like high vitamin D people. So it matches my anecdotal evidence matches the evidence. And it's like,
yeah, let's
fucking give everyone, you can go to your CVS and everyone can get free vitamin D droplets, and you can just, and then we're going to create a healthy society. Like, can you imagine how much better society would be if in health would be? It blows my mind. And vitamin D is it's like a cofactor in a lot of metabolic processes in your body. So, and so then I've seen it being associated to like depression and anxiety and all of the things, because people even relate it to a hormone. It's almost like a hormone in your body is how important it is. But anyway, it's terrifying. And Peter McCullough said that if we would have did all of these early treatments, like early treatment is the best way to preventing hospitalization, death. If we would have done these early treatments that he talks about, he said he testified in Congress and said this, that we would have prevented 85% of all the deaths. 85%.
Wow.
But anyway, yeah, that's
one question I do have. What is the APO gene, APO4 gene?
Yeah, so when I got tested recently, I just did a full panel on to see my nutrition levels. Some vitamin D was one of them, and there was a genetic test where I was the ApoE4. The ApoE gene is a gene depending on your mutation. So you go like ApoE 2, 3, 4. There's mutations that affect people differently, like you metabolize fats differently. The ApoE4 gene specifically makes you, like some studies say, 12x more likely to get Alzheimer's because of the way you metabolize omega-3 fats as well. So you need like way more omega-3 fats to get to cross the blood-brain barrier so that your brain gets the EPA and DHA fats from the omega-3. So I found out I had a double mutation of the ApoE4 gene. So I have a high risk of Alzheimer's and cardiovascular disease, heart disease. And then, so it changed my entire, I'm a huge nutrition fanatic, and I'm constantly in the science and listen to podcasts and stuff. And this kind of changed my perspective. Roughly 10 to 15% of people have this mutation. They say it prevented, the evolutionary reason is it prevented, like, it was malaria or some former, disease or something like that. That's a hypothesis of like the evolutionary reason. But people, myself, so I had higher cholesterol. If someone has this double mutation of ApoE4 gene, it's not conducive to like a ketogenic diet where you're like high on fats, and you have to kind of change your fat content. So now I'm going to get retested. So I had a few inflammatory markers and moderately high cholesterol because of this. And so now I'm going to change my entire diet to be more, get a lot of my fats from fish and like nuts and seeds versus like more meat and dairy and that type of thing. So like, and then eat a lot more veggies than I did before. And it's just interesting. I told you about that just because like overnight, my entire view shifted. There's an entire like forum of these people. They call themselves like the canaries of the coal mine, because it's like where they found out about this, and then like they metabolize fats differently and omega-3s, and you have to change your entire diet and yada yada yada. And so now I'm just like now experimenting with this, and I'm going to get tested again to see if these lifestyle changes improved it, vitamin D and all the things. But yeah, that's ApoE.
You know what? So I've been listening to I have the same issue actually. Well, I haven't gotten to, can you send me the information on how you get tested? Because so I told you I'm with Ford now. And we had the conversation because my cholesterol is like moderately high, just like you said. But I've tested for high cholesterol for like, I don't know, for the past 10 years. And we had that same conversation with my doctor, and she said kind of the same thing. She said like there's different people. She wasn't specific because I didn't get any kind of specific test, but like it's in your genetics, and yes, you got to change your diet to eating more fish, seeds, and that kind of thing. that's one thing that Peter Attia has been on. As a matter of fact, that's about him, like metabolic syndrome, and like he goes into details of like how cholesterol, how fats travel throughout the bloodstream, and it's just more. There's more. I would say there's a lot more genetic components to it than anything, as far as preventing disease later on in life, if that makes sense.
What drove me to eating a more, like, there's a shit ton of evidence around higher fat diets and longevity and lowering your carbohydrates in general. If you want to broadly categorize carbs and fats, it's like you eat more fats, less carbs, you're going to live longer, you're going to be healthier, yada yada yada. But obviously it gets more nuanced once you break it down, and it's like there's eating fats from fish is probably more conducive to someone who has an ancestry that was seaside, and that's what I'm assuming. Like I did a genetic test where 25% of my genes were from Scandinavia, and the other one was from like Ireland, UK-ish, which is all islands. So I'm assuming I had a lot of ancestry that ate a shit ton of fish. Yeah. So it's probably like consumption of fish was really high, Mediterranean like diet, and that I need to. There's a genetic mismatch, and that's why nutrition is a good analogy to everything like we've been talking about, of a nuanced conversation, because people want to throw broad strokes across it and say you're supposed to do this.
Yes, and that's my entire problem with our medical system. There's not a broad stroke that applies to everyone. We all have our bodies work differently, and I think that's why pharmacogenetics is like the future of medicine. You just can't tell everyone to do the same things, and what's healthy for one person is not healthy for another person. And I guess that's the broader conversation that I've been thinking about, as far as what is it? The word we've been using a lot in this conversation is nuance. And I think that's a sign of intelligence, or like that's a sign that you're addressing the problem when you start getting into. I think it's unavoidable to be nuanced. I know that doesn't fit a lot of people's personality types, the types that want to just like, I have a million, like that goes against the social media culture, because in social media, you want to be broad and generalized so you can get, those millions of followers, but that's not conducive to any kind of intelligent conversation or any meaningful conversation about anything in life.
It's uncomfortable. It's the hero's journey type thing. That's the way I'm envisioning. It's like what you're before you leave on that journey, like you can talk about the journey, you can increase your dopaminergic response, your dopamine response to like talking about this fantastic journey, and you're gonna have all these great things. But once you leave on that journey, you're gonna experience uncomfortable. You're going to experience conflict. You're going to have to be resilient and all these things. And then at the end of it, there's positivity. And I feel like that, using that analogy to like a conversation, a dialogue, it's like in the beginning, social media is like the beginning of the journey where you get this dopamine response. You can be all happy and yada, yada, yada. And then you're done. You don't have to take the hero's journey. You're done. Nuance and dialogue, you have to take it, and you have to get uncomfortable and cognitive dissonance and like change the way you think and believe on the snap of a dime, like I did with nutrition with this ApoE mutation, or after the saga of 2019 and 2020 and a lot of people have changed their belief systems, but social media is definitely, there needs to be a new social media platform to come out, especially with Twitter like censoring everyone. Robert Malone just got censored. He's like a huge proponent, like a huge expert on COVID and the vaccine. He was the creator of the mRNA vaccine. He just got censored, which is just sickening. There's another reason why you should leave social media. You shouldn't commit to these platforms that are censoring information goes back to what we're talking about. How can you be nuanced if there isn't a nuanced opposite opinion? It's crazy.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Dude. All right. It's going on 11. Do you want to stop here or
Let me see. Do we have anything else to talk about? What other topics do we have?
we got the meaning John Vervaeke. Did I pronounce this right? Vervaeke.
Yeah, John Vervaeke, I think that
Vervaeke.
there's this yeah, we can end on the meaning crisis. He says we have a meaning crisis, or he calls it the meaning crisis. This John Vervaeke guy he's a professor out of Toronto, I think, and he's become popular. He did a bunch of videos and lectures on YouTube. It's called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. But I feel as, and you and I have jumped into religion a little bit in previous podcasts, where you and I have both gone through the gauntlet of starting life in a structured, rigid religion, and then we escaped into atheism, and then we became more spiritual post atheism. And I feel like society is at that realm too, where like we need an innate belief system. It's in our blood.
Mm-hmm.
And in the things that come with it. And if you don't fill it with some type of spiritual development, then you're going to fill it with ideology and whatnot. So he's coming in and he's talking about that as like a meaning crisis, and especially with people not having. There was a quote I think I wrote in here. So Viktor Frankl, have you ever read the book The Man's Search for Meaning?
No, I haven't.
He great book, really small. He was a Auschwitz prisoner, and he's a psychologist and as well, and it's a great book. But he says that he said the greatest task for any person is to find meaning in his or her life. Viktor Frankl saw 3 possible sources for meaning. He said in work is one source.
Mm-hmm.
And the other source is in love, and then the third is in courage during difficult times. And so he said suffering in and of itself is meaningless. We give our suffering meaning by the way in which we respond to it.
That's a lot to think about, man. I like that.
Yeah.
Like work, love, and courage in difficult times.
Mm-hmm. And that third one is basically it, because he gets into the psyche of the prisoner, and he wrote a book during it. So it's like courage during difficult times. He experienced that in the nth degree in Auschwitz during the Holocaust. But this John Vervaeke guy, that it's like, I think this is where we need to go. And I think that people are yearning for this, of like having some philosophical system or target to where we can derive meaning. If our churches aren't doing it, if our churches aren't doing it for us, and obviously politics isn't going to do it for us, like we need something else. And he kind of dives into that and uses a lot of Greek philosophy and spirituality and religion and yada yada yada. And I think this is the type of thing, these are the types of like strong nuance topics of conversation that can help bring us out, that we need in this time of direness that we're in, that we've talked about since the start of the podcast. The reason why there's like there is OD deaths are up 28% year over year. I just saw, so over 100,000 overdose deaths. It's that to me is a loss of meaning when you break it down as its core.
Well, it's prevalent everywhere in our society, and I think like even on a lighter subject level, like the wokeness thing. Like I think Elon Musk had a interview, I think with PragerU or something. I believe that was what it was, and he was like, how woke people are, basically. And I hate the term woke because it's so overused, but like they're really just using that as that's their meaning in life. And it's always the same people, Antifa people. It's always those same people. What is happening is that our society has moved away from the Judeo-Christian foundation. Like one of my favorite television shows. I don't know if you've seen it, The Neighborhood. Have you seen that?
No.
They just recently had this episode. It is so funny. It's with what's his name? It has a good cast, but the main guy is Cedric the Entertainer.
Mm.
And the couple there, the white couple, they were so excited to have some parent friends, because they have a little son, and they had some parent friends, but the parents were woke, whatever. And they were just they were raising their child with all these like new age philosophies and listening to these podcasts, and their child was just a little brat, like the worst child ever invented, right? And I look at stuff like that. I mean, it's funny to see that on TV, but at the same, and the reason why I brought that up is like they confronted them about it, and they were like, "Yeah, we like a more traditional parenting, and blah blah blah." And the woke couple was like, "That's so Judeo-Christian of you," and I'm like, "That's it."
Mm.
And I say this to everyone. I'm like, you don't have to like Christianity, but Christianity is sort of like that straight out of the box. You don't have to do anything. That's the meaning in your life. It will give you meaning. I'm not saying it's the best form of meaning. I'm not saying that it's and Christianity throughout the centuries have had, like the Crusades and the Inquisitions. It has a bad name. It has a bad rep. But within our modern times, Christianity is just a straight out of the box meaning that will get you where you need to go. I remember when we were working together, and you said something like, if I had to choose someone to watch my kids or something like that, then it would definitely be someone that is like, I look at Christianity in a different light. Like it would be someone that would be something that I would take into consideration if they are a Christian person. And I feel the same way. It's sort of like, it's not that Christianity is superior, it's that that they have a set of beliefs that grounds them in the real world. Now, there's
the opposite, the direct opposite. If I had a babysitter of a Christian person, especially like any type of Christian, I was hopefully one devoted versus someone who is nihilistic and ideological, definitely the devoted Christian, 100%.
Yes, because the narcissistic person is going to, what my experience has been, and keep in mind, I say this like I'm tiptoeing in this subject because we all know that there's bad people who are Christian or claim to be Christian or whatever.
Yeah, just look at the crisis within Catholicism,
Yeah, like we don't have to. I don't think that's what I'm trying to say here. But it's sort of like, if you truly believe in something and you believe in the virtue, and you espouse the virtues of that belief in the real world, then I would take that, no matter if you're a Christian, Muslim, or anything. I would take that over someone who is like, Black people are oppressed and we're going to do something about it. I'm the atheist. I don't believe in God. I only believe that there are power structures and we have to do something about it. What does that lead to? If you don't have anything, if you don't have any principles that guide how you treat your enemies, if you don't have principles that guide you on how you treat people who don't believe in the same things you believe in, what does that lead to? Then you can do anything to anyone. You know what I'm saying? If you don't have if you don't have those fundamentals that I'm referring to. And that's what I'm seeing in society. Like, it's hard to see if you're a non-religious person and you haven't experienced religion in your life at all. But there's and religion is not like, religion is only a path to meaning. It's not the only path to meaning.
Mhm.
But like I said, it's the straight
Mhm.
out of the box solution that most people can get behind. And there's other ways, but I don't think those ways are as easily accessible as religion is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and even like the Eastern religions, like Buddhism, really has no deity in the sense that we're all the same deity. We're all one. That's kind of their deity. Is all one consciousness, and so even in that regard, it's definitely a better path towards meaning versus the nihilistic negative world where nothing means anything type thing. You know what I mean? I've been fond of in hearing people interpret Christianity in the verses metaphorically. And there's a guy named Bishop Barron. I heard him on a Jordan Peterson brought him on, and he talks about the verses in a metaphorical sense, and how they can how you can use them as philosophy to guide your life. And so the
Yes.
things you're talking about, what are the principles in here that we could learn from? Cain and Abel, what is, he deceived his brother, that, you know what I
Perfect.
mean?
Yes.
Deceived his brother. Here's a recent one that, so I had my stepmom's mother died, so my step grandma passed away in December, early December, and I went to the funeral. And this is a small town. The town, there was this priest doing the sermon at the or whatever it's called, and I'm probably using the wrong terminology, at the funeral. And he was talking like this, and like I talked about with this person, Bishop Barron, in the same sense, whereas using verses as a metaphor. And there's one that stuck with me, and you probably know it. So that he referenced a verse around as the king as Ezekiah. So there's this verse in the Bible. Ezekiah says something along the lines, it was long, but it was basically, get your house in order. And especially like, get your house in order before you criticize the world, or get your house in order. And he was referencing it like, this woman, my step grandma, got her house in order, and this is why there's an abundant amount of people at her funeral, and this is why she helped her family and her kids. And the whole concept is stuck with me. It's like, get your house in order. And that isn't a new concept within Christianity, and obviously, but it's a principle that you could tease out of Christianity and use it towards meaning. What's funny is I'm writing an article right now, and I was doing some research, and I started looking at quotes from one of the oldest pieces of literature that we have on record, which is Hesiod's Works and Days. It was from 700 BC. It's a Greek piece of literature. And I found a similar principle in one of his quotes, and this obviously predates Christianity by many years, but it said, it will not always be summer. Build barns, is what he said.
Such a such a simple concept, but
Yeah.
that's what and we talk about this, but like, I think about my interactions in the real world, these ideas are not being taught to people. Like that's such a simple concept, but think about it, like preparation for the next day, or thinking about what's, if I make this investment, what are the long-term repercussions? If I date this person, what are the long-term repercussions? What is this going to look like in 5 years, 10 years?
Mhm.
Like, I used to think that that's things that everyone thinks about, but I don't think so.
Mhm.
I think stuff like that has to be taught. And it's going back to your the thing that you brought up about like the 28% increase in ODs and stuff like that. And like,
Mhm.
I've really been delving into like, talking with people and like trying to figure out what is this like mental illness thing that's going on.
Mm.
Like,
Mhm.
and it just seems like to me from a personal standpoint, and this is gonna be me, giving Christianity the nod again, I guess, because it's like, when you're around, I've never heard of this until I came to Chicago, like this mental illness thing and blah blah blah. And the thing that I starting to connect the dots with it is because there's a term that we use for, a lot of people. I remember looking at this graph. I think I was in college when I saw this graph, and it was trying to describe the mental, I would say, what is the right word for it? Like the mental aptitudes of people in Chicago. And
Mm.
on the north side of Chicago, it says there's a high number of people with neurosis. They're neurotic. And I'm like, what does that mean? And then I figured out what it meant. And I was like, why would a person be so neurotic? And then my life experience kicked in, and I was like, these people are anxious because they want to please other people. And then I don't know if you heard about it, but have you heard of what you call landmark? The landmark.
Are? Oh, no.
Oh man, it's life changing stuff. So in the landmark forum, one of the things that they address is that they try to get down to the nitty gritty of, like, what is holding you back in life.
Mm.
And for a huge amount of people, what's holding them back is them wanting to be accepted by others, and they view other people as these things that are out there in the world that they have to please. It's almost like I've never understood why zombie movies are so, like, prevalent in our society. But if you think about it, we're scared of each other more than anything.
Mm.
And the difference is, and I hope I'm articulating this correctly, is that when it comes to religious people, and that's why the religious people and Christians have been so adamant about speaking out against the woke, is because when you're taught a religion or you believe in a god or deity or whatever, other people do not become your ultimatum. Like the government or other humans, they're not your judge and executioners. God is. So you don't fear humans the same way neurotic or anxious people fear people.
Ooh,
Like, think
interesting.
about
Yeah,
it. You're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
you're in a situation where you're like, oh my God, if he sees me if they see this stain on my dress, I'm going to sink down. Like, that is the most terrifying thing that could ever happen to you, is that you present your way in front of people that in a way that you don't want to be presented, or that causes you shame, or like something like that. But if God or Jesus are the people that you're ultimately looking up to, then you're not going to be as concerned about another man or woman, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you derive your meaning internally versus externally. It's kind of how.
Yes. You don't have so much anxiety about, like, saying the wrong thing or someone. You're not as malleable by the crowd.
And what's interesting is there's those same types of people are even it happens within religion, and you see it, especially within Catholicism, especially, and actually Kanye West actually talks about this, where in his what is it, Jesus is King, I think, album, where he talks about, like, the Christians would be the ones that would judge him the most. In one of his songs. Are you a Kanye fan, by the way?
Yeah.
I mean, so he says the Christians,
the biggest fan, but I like him. Yeah.
Right. He's opened my eyes a little and helped evolve, like, in thinking about religion and Christianity differently. But he says that, and then of course in Catholicism, like, one of the biggest things is like guilt tripping in Catholicism. Just fall into that guilt tripping. But then you and I talked about, I think in one of our podcasts, about like good Christians and bad Christians, and then even on the outside world, it's like the good ideologues and the bad ideologues. And it's like, so you can even fall victim to this even within the realms. And then I think that if we had to tease out something, it's like finding those principles that you're talking about to then guide your life by. And of course, it's one of the most difficult things to do, using a religious term, is to practice what you preach. but if you continue preaching, you'll be more likely to practice it. Right.
Yeah. Man, there's so many subjects.
We could go on a rabbit hole.
I know. We'll pick one thing. So have you heard of Jack Murphy?
I don't think so.
I have this book, but he it's somewhere around here. It's called From Deplorable to Something. The Deplorables. Anyway, he's another disinfected liberal guy. And so what happened recently was an eye opener for me, and I tweeted about it a couple of days ago, and it was like he was on some kind of conservative podcast, and some kind of way he and he's a big, not, I didn't know this, but he's written this book, and he's a disinfected liberal, but he's also like in this thing where he's in the space where he's trying to teach men about dating. I forgot what you call those. There's words that you call those kind of dudes, like they're dating the vice man or whatever. And he went on this podcast. I think this happened last week or whatever. And someone who had a super chat, in the super chat, they asked him about some blog he wrote years back. And this blog was like, had some weird sexual stuff in it, right? That wasn't the thing. The thing was, and you know Sydney Watson, she's another conservative.
No.
Sydney Watson was the person who read the super chat. He straight up, and this is live, he snapped on, just cursed her out right there for reading that super chat. And people were like thrown aback by this, right? They were like, what? I got to send you the links. It's like drama. But anyway, I bring that up because what I'm seeing is I'm seeing a lot of those dating the vice men like him. And what's happening is that, because I listen to I listened to one really good dating the vice guy coming like in my 20s, and he was really good, because what he did, he got to the point where he was like, oh, I'm teaching men about, pickup lines and all of this stuff, but that doesn't mean anything. Now I'm teaching men like how to dress and all that. And I'm like, I need to dive deeper. And he dove deeper until he got to the point where we're like, oh, I need to teach these people how to find meaning in life. And the reason why I brought up Jack is because he got the other guy, and his name is DeAngelo. If you want to go, I'll probably post this stuff too. But DeAngelo, he got to that point. He was like, oh, I need to teach these people how to be better people, how to derive meaning in life. If you find a meaning and purpose in life, then it will be easy to attract whatever woman you want. But this Jack Murphy dude, it's almost like it felt like he took all the cliff notes of that, but left out all the actual meaning behind the cliff notes. And I think that's what a lot of people are doing today. They're taking the bullet points of what you're supposed to do. Like, I'm supposed to fight racism, I'm supposed to do this, but they're not getting the meanings, behind why are they doing these things. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, it makes hella sense. It relates really well to that good Christian, bad Christian thing we were just talking about.
Yeah, that's what made me think about that. It's like
you are. I talk about this a decent amount, and I've had conversations where the principles of like that religion, the farther you get from them, is the worse off you become as far as like being a bad or good.
You become worse than what you're fighting against. I think
right. Yeah. There's we can end. I looked up a quote. There's this quote that it had a good principle in it, and it kind of relates to some of those other quotes. And Kanye's new album, his Donda album, there's this song called Praise God, and his mom is doing like this church sermon at the beginning, and she recites like, even if you are not ready for the day, it cannot always be night. And then it drops into the song. It's really good. But I love that. It's the strong principle there.
Even if you're not ready for the day, it can't always be night.
Yeah.
I love that, man. Dude, we got so much for the cliff notes.
Yeah.
But let me go ahead and end it on that note.
All right, cool.